In this week's episode of Akame ga Kill, Tatsumi begins his training, and it leads to some pretty explosive and ridiculous results. This week's episode was bookended by some badassery. What I mean by that is it opened up with an action scene, and it ended with an action scene. It was really satisfying. We got to see a little bit more of what Night Raid is really capable of, and I have to say, I've actually warmed up to mine a little bit. I actually really hated her character when she was introduced, and that's only because she's just sort of that stereotypical tsundere character. She hates the main lead, then she warms up to him, then she falls for him, then we have a cheesy love story. I don't know if it's going in that direction with this show. I just see Akame as more of the, love interest for Tatsumi, if that's going to happen. What I will say is, this episode opened up with Bulot kicking some ass, and I really loved that. They actually explain his abilities a little bit, and he goes through a nice flashy transformation sequence where he summons his armor, which is known as the Incursio armor, and it's a great lengthy transformation sequence which gives him an excuse to beat the pulp out of these random mercenaries, and there is blood flying everywhere. This scene is really intense, and it's kind of dark too, because there's this one scene with this one member of Night Raid by the name of Lubbock, who is tied up with this one girl who may or may not be a bad guy. But he kills her anyway because in the past he's known about comrades who have died because of choice words from pretty girls, and it's a really messed up scene because it's very ambiguous. The main story this week is that Tatsumi and Mine are going to team up and train together, although really it's just Mine going shopping and Tatsumi having to go along. However, it does illustrate that the Empire is messed up in this series. Not only are they doing public crucifixions, but the actual Emperor himself is just this little kid who's actually being manipulated by this nasty, creepy old dude who is known as the Prime Minister. It's creepy, it's messed up, and it also just shows that obviously it's this Prime Minister guy who's probably going to be one of the main villains. But what I love about the scene is there's also this group of really weird-looking characters who are right next to him, and I imagine this is like the Royal Guards or something for the Emperor, and I'm just hoping that they're going to have some interesting powers. They also hint at this other weird character at the end of the episode who kills a couple of guys in like a split second, and he looks like he had a little too much freaking Botox. At the end of the episode, we get another action scene where apparently one of the Prime Minister's relatives lives in this mansion where he tortures girls, because that just seems to be a theme of this show, where Night Raid goes after all of these sick bastards and wipes them out one by one. But the scene is important because we actually get to learn a little bit more about Mine's backstory, and apparently she was an orphan and she was half foreign, and everybody hated her for this, and they sort of just looked down on her, and she had a shitty life as a kid. So she's trying to make up for that by joining Night Raid and trying to turn the Empire around so that everybody can be equal and all that jazz. But it sort of came out of nowhere, and it was kind of clumsy how it was handled, especially when Tatsumi actually mentioned, I wonder what happened in her backstory, and then immediately she started talking about it. Maybe in that sense, it can be seen as a little bit of humorous, because I know that we were going to get to her backstory eventually, but, it was very quick, and it was very simple and by the book, but it also led to another action scene where they got to take out this one dude, and Tatsumi got to use her massive weapon and blew a massive hole through this dude's chest, which was pretty damn awesome. And it was a great way to end the episode, and you can see that she's finally starting to warm up to Tatsumi, which is great, because the team is finally starting to become stronger. However, I want to see Tatsumi do something a little more interesting other than just using his sword. That's the one thing that's going to have to change about Tatsumi in this series is he's going to have to kind of try to find his gimmick. And I don't mean gimmick like in a bad way, he just needs to find something that's special about him, because every other member of the group is really unique in their abilities and their personality, and Tatsumi just sort of comes across as like the created avatar of an MMORPG who hasn't leveled up quite yet. Although, maybe I am jumping the gun. This is very early in the series. We still know barely anything about any of the characters, and they still really aren't even getting into the details of the finer points of the series. Really, we're just trying to be introduced to all the different members of Night Raid, who are all really awesome, and they're incredible. Bulot is awesome. He's still my favorite member. Just his scenes this week were great when he was taking out all those guys and there's just a shower of blood. That was so freaking wicked. But Mine, I'm really surprised by her. I was ready to hate her character immediately, and I warmed up to her not only because she started to, reveal her backstory and start to warm up to Tatsumi, but because in the beginning of the episode, she wore a scouter, and that's awesome, because I'm a huge Dragon Ball Z fan. So What's the rundown on this week's episode of Akame ga Kill? I liked it. I liked it a lot. It wasn't a perfect episode, and there's a trend that I am starting to see, and it's sort of a 50-50, give and take. I like the fact that there are these really intense action scenes where suddenly they do like a still image just to like show how quick everything's happening, and that can be seen as lazy, but at least the artwork looks really awesome when that happens. I really wish they would put a little bit more, budget into this series, because that's my only real complaint with Akame ga Kill so far, is that it's not really doing anything too crazy in terms of the animation, but at least it always looks really clean and consistent throughout. All the characters always resemble themselves. Their faces aren't like looking all wonky and ridiculous and crazy. Everything does at least look clean. It's just kind of generic, and I mean that in the absolute nicest way possible. However, it is saved by the fact that the members of Night Raid all look really awesome, especially Bulat with his Incursio armor. And another detail that I didn't even mention this week, there was this great scene where Akame was fighting against a couple of these guys, and she took out 3 guys at once with her sword. And what's really interesting, and they showed this in the first episode, when she actually slashes somebody, there are these like weird like symbols that go all over their body, and that's because her sword is apparently like poisoned, or it has like a curse ability where even if she just slashes you anywhere, you're going to get hit by this ability and it's going to kill you. And this just shows how dangerous she's going to be, and she seems like she's going to be a very intriguing character. And they've mentioned her backstory a little bit, but I want them to get into that a little bit more. I mean, she's clearly probably the main female lead of the series, but I mean, there's so much more I want to know about the different members of Night Raid. So I really liked this week's episode. I have high hopes for the rest of the series. I can't wait to see how the story is going to unfold, and I hope that the budget goes up a little bit more. Maybe when they get to the more bombastic action scenes, when the story starts to kick in, is when it'll start to look a little bit different. But otherwise, it's still a fun show to watch, and if you're into action or anime at all, give the show a watch. It's at least got some really cool scenes and some pretty interesting characters. So I'm going to give this week's episode an 8 out of 10, which is pretty damn good, and it makes me want to watch the next one, and you guys should watch it too. This is Akame ga Kill. Check it out, guys. Thank you guys for watching my review. Before you leave, please hit that like button so you can give this video a thumbs up. It really helps us out a lot. And please subscribe to the channel if you have not already. You can also check us out on Facebook and on Twitter. I'll put links to those in the description box below. And before you go, please tell me what you guys thought about this week's episode of Akame ga Kill. Did you have any favorite moments? And what do you think is really going on with the Empire and the Prime Minister? Please tell me with your comments. So guys, that concludes my review today. Super Kami Guru 9000. Peace out, dudes.